All right. Hi, guys. So this video is going to finish our notes for this unit. So if you don't have your notes packet out right now, make sure you have your ecology notes out. And the very last thing for you to complete is this definition right here. So biological magnification, or oftentimes we shorten it into biomagnification. So if you need to pause the video to get your notes out and get situated, please do that. But I'm going to keep on rolling. So in this quick video, we're going to take a look at biomagnification, which is when we see toxins increase the concentration as they move up the food chain. So let's pause and think about that. A few days back when we did notes, I talked about a lot of things that actually decrease as we go up the food chain, right? So I talked about the number of organisms or biomass, and it decreases as we go up the food chain, and the amount of energy as we go up the food chain also decreases. But here we see the opposite. And so you can kind of keep that in mind because of the term magnification. So this actually magnifies as we go up the food chain. So what we're looking at toxins, and we're seeing that the levels of specific toxins increase in every trophic level. So you can see here in this picture, we start with producers here at the bottom. ppm is just a way that scientists measure concentrations of a substance. So you can see in the plants, in this example, they sampled the plant tissues and the concentration was 0.04. In the primary consumers, it was 0.23. The secondary consumers, it was 2.07. And then we got to the tertiary consumers and it was over 13. So just to put in perspective, this is kind of what we're looking at, are particular materials that increase as we go up the food chain. A real life example is with DDT and bald eagles. So DDT is still a really effective pesticide. So it is known to kill pests. When it was first discovered, we used it really widely. So we used it in farming. So if you look here, for many decades across multiple countries, but also here in the United States, we would just douse farm fields with this chemical called DDT. Some farmers would spray it manually, and some would hire a pilot like this on the bottom right, and they would literally just fly over the fields and just cover their fields with this chemical DDT. And again, it was killing the pests that were harming their crops, and it was really good at it. It was actually so good at killing pests that we started, some countries still use it today for pesticides such as, or to kill pests such as like mosquitoes in areas that are, where there's lots of malaria or something like, or another insect-borne illness like that. So you can see that we used a lot of DDT. We thought it was totally harmless, to the point where you can see on the top left here, they must be spraying for probably mosquitoes on a beach, and kids are just running through it. So we totally thought that it was safe. Unrelatedly, at one point in time, probably in the 60s or 70s, some nerdy little scientist was out hiking and said, hey, the bald eagle population is really low. And so people started to go get outside and observe the bald eagles. And across the United States, bald eagle populations had totally declined. They didn't know why. They didn't know what to do, except that their populations were really low. So scientists, they relied on little field biologists to go out there, find surviving bald eagles and study them, watch them, see what was the problem. And they actually couldn't figure out a problem. So they were watching the surviving bald eagles, and it appears as though they were healthy. They were flying just fine. They were finding mates. They were mating just fine. They were catching food just fine. They were building these huge, massive, their bald eagle nests are like 6 feet wide. So they were building these huge, massive nests in appropriate locations, and they were building them perfectly. And then there'd be no babies. So they'd keep an eye, and they'd keep an eye, and they'd keep an eye on that nest, and never were there ever babies, or very few surviving babies. So finally, scientists realized we got to get in that nest and see what's going on. And that's what they did. So when they got in the nest, this is what they saw. So they saw that the eagles were actually, laying eggs. It looked like they were incubating them just like they were supposed to. But the eggs that they found were just totally crushed. And so just feeling the eggs, they could tell that they were not normal, healthy bald eagle eggs. And so their eggs were just paper thin. And so when the mama would go to incubate them, she would just squash her own eggs. They had no idea what the heck could be causing this. So they took samples of the tissues back to a lab, and sure enough, bald eagles are on the top of the food chain, and the tissues in these eggs were just really high in DDT. So once the connection was made and it was successfully proven, that DDT has since been banned here in the United States. So that was like in the 70s, I think it was banned. And ever since then, we have seen, like a dream comeback of the bald eagle populations. So the ban started back in the 70s, and you can see this is the bald eagle population. And this only goes to 2007. And now the bald eagle population is like really healthy, really good. In Ohio, we have lots of breeding pairs of bald eagles. Even pretty locally, there's actually a few that you've probably heard about on the news, and they get tons of attention. So DDT is one example of biomagnification. Another example is mercury, and we're actually in the middle of this. So mercury is mostly released into the atmosphere from coal burning power plants. So almost all of our electricity comes from burning coal. So wherever we're burning coal, we're releasing mercury into the atmosphere. The problem is that mercury ends up somewhere. We see it most often deposited in our waterways, in the soil, essentially wherever it lands. So in our water, we have high concentration in our natural water. So creeks, rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, we have high concentrations of mercury. We see that it's actually it becomes, what am I trying to say? It starts at the bottom. So it starts in the plants, and then it just gets passed up the food chain. And what happens with these molecules, the DDT and mercury, you guys, is it doesn't get flushed out. So let's say you just ate lunch. As you're watching this, you just ate lunch and you had Doritos. Doritos have a whole bunch of crap and chemicals in there. But as far as we know at this point, all of that stuff that our bodies don't need, we poop or pee out. And a lot of materials, that's the case. So our bodies handle it just as any other waste it doesn't need, and we poop or pee those chemicals out. The problem with DDT and mercury is that they actually get dissolved in our tissues, and it is never washed out. So it just builds and it collects. And over time, the concentration just continues to increase and increase and increase. So what we have is in the top left here in the corner, you can see my power plant, my coal burning power plant is releasing mercury into the atmosphere. It's making its way into our waterways, which is happening as we speak. And so now we have the process of bioaccumulation occurring, for example, in our aquatic ecosystems. So the fish, like this tuna, that's actually really high up on the food chain in this marine ecosystem, because tuna are really predatory fish. They have really high concentrations of mercury. So it's to the point, you guys, where doctors are actually they have been for years, are warning pregnant moms or soon to be pregnant moms of eating too much fish because they contain mercury because of bioaccumulation or biomagnification. So I want to show you really quickly this website. So this is the latest flyer that I could find, which just goes to show that we need to be aware of what we're eating. So this is really just saying, hey, women who are or who might become pregnant, if they're breastfeeding, or even young children, should be aware of the fish they're eating. And if you read through, it tells you like who should be aware and kind of why. And then at the bottom here, it has the best choices of fish to eat. So these guys are going to be like lower on the food chain and hopefully contain less mercury. So these are the best choices that you can eat a couple times a week good choices you can eat once and choices to totally avoid because they're higher on the food chain. So this is something to be aware of, and this is surely something that's not going away. So unfortunately, because of our choices, we just continue to burn coal, which continues to just release mercury into the atmosphere. So in class, we're going to look at least one other example in a lab or a virtual lab and kind of see actually how a chemical makes its way up the food chain. But that's it for your notes. And make sure that all of your other notes are also complete. Okay.